Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have NeAndre Broussard with me. NeAndre is the founder of Black Menswear, and I'm super excited to highlight his story just because of all of the things that he's doing above and beyond working a full-time job. He also then created this business, and that has grown exponentially. So it'll be fun to highlight the pivotal moments that have led him to these different avenues that he's in now. So, Andre, thanks so much for being on today.
Nah, thanks for having me. Thanks for taking a moment just to dive into the movement that we've got started and just give us more opportunities to share the positivity around it. So thank you so much.
You betcha. And one thing you're going to hear today is that his biggest passion is empowering people. And so I love what his mission is and what Black Menswear is all about. So we'll dive in. So, Andre, for you, growing up, your dad is a military guy, and your mom, knowing she was going to be moving frequently, was more on the entrepreneurial route. So, talk a little bit about that and growing up.
Man, I'm very grateful for the balance that I had in my household between my mom and my dad. Right. Again, my dad structure. Obviously, being he served 21 years in the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
so he was brainwashed at a young age, 18 out of high school. That structure is how you live your life, right?
Yeah.
And so he passed that on to me and to my siblings, and then having that balanced with my mom's idea of opportunity
Yeah.
and taking risks and strategic challenges and being strategic as you overcome challenges, excuse me. Having the balance of the two of those together, I think for me really developed into the person that I am today, to
Yeah.
where to your point, even though I've been able to launch and create a very successful movement in business and Black menswear. I still do maintain my 9 to 5 in the financial services realm as it relates to helping agents find their space in this space as a wholesaler. Um, but the balance of being able to structure everything out, structure my days out to where I can balance and between the two of them, as both are growing simultaneously. I think that having both trains of thought from a young age as
Yeah.
influences on me have really helped to get to where I am today, and having just the ongoing blessings, success that I've had, just being able to understand it and take it all into scope based on how I grew up in that military iron fist household.
Yeah.
That was that was also like well, son, have you thought about this? This could be an opportunity for you. You should take it out, take your chances, take your opportunities. So it was great.
Yeah. Now, something that you had mentioned was, growing up, you didn't have any teachers that looked like you until you got into, I believe it was high school.
Yep.
And you just talked about how that really impacted you. So, talk a little bit about not having it and then having that for you in the educational space.
You know, so the first time that I had a Black teacher, I was actually in the 8th grade. And no, I take that back. I take that back. My 7th grade life skills teacher.
Yeah.
Uh, um, and the accountability. I had never really had accountability. I was always, and let me say this: I was a smart kid, so I got good grades.
Yeah.
I was not like that's another blessing of my parents. I was a very smart, intelligent child. So I got good grades, but even at that point, when you realize smart children finish their work quick. Me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So me finishing my work quickly, I did get in trouble a lot for talking,
Yeah.
right? Like, NeAndre's talking again. NeAndre's talking again. Like, NeAndre's not. I'm not jumping off tables. I'm not punching kids. I'm just talking
Yeah.
because I'm finished with my work. I got all the questions right, and so at that point there was, and at that point I never had anybody that was like, okay, you have to understand. Yes, you're finished, but what you're talking is doing. You're interrupting other people who might not understand it at this point.
Yeah.
What that can lead to is them not being able to grasp the concepts, them not getting, as good of grades because you are being a distraction to them by trying to engage in conversation with them. So then it became, hey, you have to understand one, the perception that you're leaving on teachers, right? The perception is not that, oh, this is a smart kid. The perception is this child won't stop talking. Why won't you stop talking? You're being a distraction to the other students. To that point, also with me being, military child, I traveled a lot. There were a lot of times that I went to schools where there might not have been other black kids in class. Right. And so now you're looking at, all right, so you got one black kid in class. Yeah, he makes all A's, but he's talking all the time. Right. And does that negative perception further a stereotype that a teacher has that doesn't necessarily have interaction with a lot of black kids? Say, oh, hey, the black kids I got in class, they talk all the time. And it's not he's top of the class. It's the negative weight and the negative. So I didn't necessarily have that accountability. And in my assumption, and this is completely an assumption, was because the life experiences that I had versus others that didn't grow up in the same type of household with the same lessons that I got, just cultural lessons. That didn't land on them to a point where it made sense for them to hold me accountable. They didn't really care. They're like, okay, let's get him through the class, and he'll be somebody else's problem. And to, frankly speaking, and to have that where it was like you don't understand what you're doing in a broader spectrum, right? Obviously, my parents were like, you need to sit down. My dad's military, sit down. You don't speak unless spoken to, right? These are lessons that you get at the house every day. I don't understand why you're going to school, you're not doing those, right? So that iron fist ruled in a little different method. But there were times where I forgot, and I just get to it. And having somebody really, and then at that point, so 7th grade, then I had another one in 8th grade. And then also in 8th grade, I went to school with my dad, right? So he wasn't my teacher; he was my football coach. But there was also this, hey, you're Coach Broussard's son. You need to get it together. My dad was in the military. He retired from the military. He went into education, and so there was again that accountability going into high school, having teachers, and again at this point. And maybe now I'm thinking about it. Maybe it was because my dad works in the district, and I had teachers that knew my dad that would then become my teachers, and they were NeAndre. You have to understand, right? And it became more about you need to understand, and less about don't do this, don't do that. And so they helped me to train my mind and thinking less about the situation and more about the results or the outcome or the perceptions that are happening in these situations and circumstances. So now as I look forward on that, me having those teachers to understand, man, one of the worst moments I had, I was a sophomore in high school, and I was a smart kid. I was in I want to say chemistry. So, it was an advanced course in high school. Again, and this is at the point like now I lived in an area where I was in suburban Houston, but it was a pretty solid mixture. But in this class, I was the only black student. And again, I was completing my work quicker, right? I was getting caught up in this. Like, I am done, man. What's going on? And the teacher asked a question. It was a prodding, like, let me get y'all to think about something. He asked a question, and it was a question about who's excelling in this class, and it was a rowdy a rowdy bunch. And he asked the question, and I raised my hand like this, and his response to me, calling me out directly in front of all those students, had a moment where I was like, this is not. I told my parents about it because he was like, you shouldn't even be in here. And to tell that to a 14-year-old, I'm sorry, what? What do you? Well, oh yeah, but you shouldn't even be in here. Well, what do you mean? Why shouldn't I be in here versus this student that I have a better grade than versus that student that I have a better grade than, but I shouldn't be in here. And that hit me in one of those moments. And my parents had a nice little conversation. But it all comes back to perception. Now, granted, his perception was way off, right? Extremely off base. And again, had this teacher probably been a better teacher. He would have understood the situation, like,
Right.
how to course direct in that situation for a teenager, right?
Yep.
He's not talking to a grown up; he's talking to a teenager, right?
Yep. Yep.
And how to better course correct. And again, that was one of those moments where, unfortunately, as a student, I had to look around and say, well, what's the only difference between me and the rest of the rowdy bunch? Okay, I wonder if that's what it was, right? And then you also had that lingering thought.
Yeah.
But long way around that. Having teachers that understood my experiences, understood my family dynamic, understood where I came from, and knew how to speak to me in that language or in a way that, hey, bro, sit your butt down.
Yeah.
Don't make me, but in a way that I got. Because what
Yep.
you're doing is messing up not only for you, but for others that come after you. And they just like, oh, wow, okay, all right. And that accountability that they held me to was definitely something that I appreciate.
That's really good. No, that's good. Now, as you're going through high school, you end up deciding, hey, there's a lot of universities you can go to, but if you go to too big of a university, it's probably hard to leave a mark or it's hard
Yeah.
to have impact there. So talk about, picking SMU and what value you got having been there.
No, you actually have done your research. That was, again, it's funny. Like I remember telling my parents this. So we had just went on a visit when I was in high school. We went on a visit to SMU and TCU on the same day. We came up to Dallas Fort Worth, did that visit, and then we went to, ooh, I want to say it was University of Houston and A&M, and it was at that moment, because you go from a smaller spectrum where the visit is much more, it's really having a conversation, and you're, versus when it was a large group visit, and it was just like, okay, well, I'm one of 300 people that are here on this, on this, taking this visit, right?
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Here, I'll hit record and then, yeah, you just pick up where you're at with there's about 300 kids. Okay.
Okay. So they were, going on different site visits for schools. When I went to the larger school, there were like 300 of us doing a tour, everybody together, and it's kind of like a yell, like, hey, yeah, this is what this is, and this is what that is, and going to the smaller schools where it's 1 on 10,
Yeah.
1 on 5, and we're going, and I'm getting a really guided experience, a very I feel very much more relatable experience. That hit me too. It's like, man, I want to be able to leave an impact to an extent that it can be greater felt,
Yeah.
versus getting lost in a sea of, a sea of everything going on, more distractions and those kind of things. And so my decision to go to an SMU or to be honest, right, I was supposed to go to Tulane, but when I was a senior in high school was when Hurricane Katrina happened, and
Mm.
SMU was my number two choice. And then so I made the decision to come to SMU based off of that, which was, again, I look at, you talk about the name of the podcast. I think about, like, when I was at that point, not like I knew things were going to be good coming out, but that decision to go to an SMU, or not to an SMU, go to SMU, based off of those experiences, and being able to actually do that, like leaving a mark, leaving a legacy, like starting a mentorship program between our undergrad and our alumni, our Black undergrad group and our Black alumni group, and bridging
Yeah.
that gap, right? Being able to do that has now blossomed into a gala and a scholarship that they do every year.
How
Um,
cool.
Having that type of imprint was always something that I want to do, because to your point earlier about my introduction, is about empowering people,
Yeah.
and that was one of those ways. And I saw that early on, man. How can I help empower others to to do well, and to know their best self? So that was really one of those things that I understood at a younger age.
Yes. So as you're coming out of SMU, as do a lot of people, you look at some of the larger financial institutions and you say, well, that would be kind of cool to go start up there. So you get started with JP Morgan. And while you're there, something that I guess resonates with you is the idea that the Black mindset on wealth is different. And so this is something I feel like I can help change and, think about differently. So talk just a little bit about what your life experience was with that. And then, why that was such a big calling for you.
Yeah. And so Grant, the one thing that I really, really loved about my time at JP Morgan Chase was training. That organization trained because you're a representation of them when you sit in front of clients.
Yeah.
And so with the training, obviously you attain more knowledge and you really go and start really digging deeper and understanding the landscape of your client space.
Yeah.
And just really understanding the wealth gaps in communities, right? And looking at, the Asian community, the Caucasian community, and the Hispanic and the Black community, right? There was a very big gap in between that. And just really kind of focusing on understanding why and the how. One thing that I quickly learned as I even thought back about family members and my experiences, like, damn, we don't really talk about money a lot. Like, that's one of those things where, now granted, you don't talk about pain points often, right?
Right.
If you don't have a lot of it, why are you talking about it, right?
Yeah.
And so you think about even the reference of conversations that go on. Yeah. One of my buddies, he said, he's like, man, he's like, I was driving Uber for a little while, and he's like, one of the things that I learned quickly is that conversations are different among different people. He was like, I get a group of guys or gals, right, that are from other communities. They get in the back of my car. They're very much drunk, right?
Yeah.
But their conversation, even though they're drunk, they're talking about, hey man, I'm thinking about going buying this property. Hey man, I'm thinking about transferring money from this type of account to this type of account. Hey, I'm thinking about this and that. And he's like, I get some members of our community, I ain't talking about none of that. But you have to realize and understand why. It's because if I don't have access to it, what am I talking about it for? Anything else is just, I'm just talking, I'm just blowing hot smoke. And really understanding that experiences really guide to conversations.
Right.
So where it's like, I can go and I can have an educated conversation. Oh, I can talk up and down about sports. I can talk up and down about culture and these kind of things. But when it talks about, hey man, so what you doing with your money? Ooh, I ain't really there yet. And now granted, I'm not saying every white person has it figured out, every Asian person has it figured out and those kind of things. But when you dive into those conversations, the deflections come so quickly. Hey, you want to talk? I don't want to talk about that. Like, and really, as I had those conversations, I had more and started talking with more family about things. Like, man, that's just a way to be able to really kind of change a different landscape. Because when you think about leverage, when you think about unfair lending practices, the crux of that was leverage. The crux of that was we didn't value the dollar that came from this community enough, so that way we were like, okay, well, let's manipulate this community because we don't value their leverage enough. Right. And really understanding the economics that came behind that. And when you don't have financial leverage, you don't get laws passed. You don't get schools funded the way that they should be funded. There's a lot of things that come that kind of trickle down because you don't have the financial leverage in place. And really understanding and taking all that into perspective, it became what can I do at least to try to help, try to be more responsible in the knowledge that I have, to be able to pass that on to then say, if I can help someone's frame of reference adjust. If my frame of reference adjusts, I know I don't have XYZ in my savings account, but if I do know that I should have 3 to 6 months of my expenses saved up, that's a goal for me to go towards. Once I complete that goal, I'm like, I'm not touching that money, but now I understand, hey, I can save money. I can modify my budget and break some things out. And now that I got my 3 to 6 months saved up, well, shoot, what's my next saving goal? Now I'm saving towards, investments. Now I'm saving towards these things. And now if I can just change one tweak about this or that, it helps somebody's mind open up some, I feel as though I've done my part in this industry and really in everything that we do.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And to your point, there's not any one race that has it completely figured out, right, from top to bottom. But I think there are bigger disparities among certain races, right, than there are in other ones. So,
Yeah.
oh, that's a great point. So, as you're progressing through, you continue on this route of wanting to help educate, especially the Black community, but really people in general on financial instruments and things they can be doing. But simultaneously, there are some things going on in the US that just are not quite sitting right with you on how they're going. And so in 2017, that's when we get started. So talk a little bit about just kind of how that came to start up for you.
Yeah. So to be honest, man, I was sitting and I was watching the news. Shame on me. I'm sitting and watching the news, and you go back to 2014. I want to say it is 2014 is I want to say the first. No, even before then, Eric Garner in New York selling cigarettes got put in a chokehold, and we see that a group of police officers, one specifically has a chokehold on him, and we get the "I can't breathe" statement. And that triggered a lot of trauma for me as an individual, because the thing about it is the trauma comes from, dang, I've been there. I've been to that place before, right? And maybe I wasn't selling cigarettes, but I've been standing outside of a location like that before in my neighborhood, in my community, or going to visit my family, and we go to and then we have, Michael Brown shortly thereafter, in Ferguson, Missouri. Then it's just, it's every month and a half, 2 months, Tamir Rice, a child playing in a park with a gun.
Right.
The police shouldn't have even been called to the situation. And then now, he's got a toy gun. He definitely looks like a child, but these are all traumatic experiences that are happening and landing on me.
Yeah.
In my community. And the thing about it, right? So a lot of people kind of were in uproar about what is this whole, all lives matter. Nobody ever said they don't.
Yep.
What we are saying is that all of these traumatic experiences that are being showcased to the voice of that this community's lives don't matter, because so quickly they're gone.
Yes.
And the one that really hit me to kind of start this was Philando Castile. Mm-hmm. And so the ones prior, right, even going back to Eric Garner, where the Black Lives Matter movement started.
Yep.
Truly going back to that, and I'm not saying Black Lives Matter from a political landscape as it's fallen. I'm just talking about the true essence of, hey, don't forget about our lives when you try to say, well, so and so shouldn't have been doing this and that. Nah, even at the end of the day, you are one of your constitutional rights is the right to a trial.
Yep.
And you're not even allowing this person, because you devalue their life so much that, boop, we're gonna kill you. It doesn't, and the Philando Castile situation hit me so much, because this gentleman was an upstanding citizen. They tried to paint pictures of everybody to that point. It's like, there's nothing bad. There's like, this guy, there's we can't find the bad.
Yeah.
And when they talked about he was riding in the passenger seat of the vehicle. All right, well, I'm not driving. You pulled my girlfriend over for speeding or whatever it was, or the left turn signal, whatever it was. You pulled her over.
Yep.
Why? Okay, well, if you want my ID, it's weird that you be asking me that, but I guess I fit a description of somebody that you feel like you need to find out why I'm in the passenger seat, right?
Yep.
I'm informing you. I'm letting you know this is a license to carry state. I'm not pulling my weapon. I promise you, I'm going for my ID because you asked me for it. Yep. I'm going for it. And before I can even bring it out, you've shot and killed this man. You shot him one, and you shot into a vehicle,
Right.
right? At
Oh,
close range. So one, the odds of this person surviving are low because you already shot them at close range. But then two, you see a toddler in the back seat. You see a spouse, a fiance in this other seat. You don't take anybody's life into, into that. And it was just how that whole situation fell out, and then the aftermath of that, where they were using images of Philando Castile not as a father, not as a member of the community, but they were trying to even villainize him so that way the public perception of the police officers remained high and the public perception of this black man was
yeah.
tarnished,
Yeah.
right? And so that way, if you're proven guilty in public perception, it goes to trial. We should be good because the jurors have already seen the story. They already
Right.
know, oh, he should, so and so, whatever should have happened. And like for me at that moment, I was like, dang, well, what if something happens to me, right? Because now I've had this trauma and I can put myself in this. What kind of images are they going to use of me, right?
Yeah.
How are they going to try to like put a picture of me in my baggy clothes from college,
Yeah.
right? Or in my, because that was the
Yeah.
culture. It wasn't anything bad about me. That was the culture.
Yep.
And if they can utilize that and they dig into the archives, how are they going to portray me? And that was a moment that hit me really heavy. And it's like, man, well, what can I do to help change that perception of portrayal?
Yeah.
And one, it was really twofold. One, it was that perception. If I put out so much positive imagery in my community, they can no longer speak negatively in my community because there's so much positive imagery.
Yeah.
But then also the idea of I'm having this internal trauma because every image that I see of myself is of a negative
Mm,
interaction. It's of a villain image in the news and in the media. And
yeah.
so, how can I change the perception of how I see myself just from the optics of it, not just me, but my children, my sons, my brothers in my community? How can we feel better about ourselves because that media portrayal of us does not make us feel good about who we are, and it puts you into a position of, well, if it happens, it was supposed to happen
Yeah.
because that's what I've been seeing all anyway. I'm supposed to be in jail because that's what I've been seeing anyway. I'm supposed to have a record because that's what I've been seeing anyway. They've trained
Mm,
our minds to think that way, and so if I could help to retrain the mind and say, no, there are positive images of us in the community. There are positive players and pillars in our community. They just need
yeah.
to have a voice and they need to be showcased more. That was my idea around the mission and around the movement.
Absolutely. So one of the first things that you decide to do is let's do a photo shoot. And I would love to say that right off the bat, you have, hundreds and thousands of people show up to the first photo shoot, but I think it was like 20 people.
Yeah, yeah. Shoot,
So
even 20 people for positive energy,
yeah,
right? I wasn't paying anybody to show up. I
yeah,
wasn't providing any food, any female counterparts for them to, It was like, hey guys, let's get together early morning. Let's take some pictures because I think like these pictures can change our community.
yeah,
The community, the camaraderie that's around that, and having 20 guys come out to the very first flash mob, October 2017 here in Dallas. Um, Having 20 guys and just the energy that was there among the 20 guys, right?
yeah,
Granted, I probably knew about 50% of them.
yeah,
50% of them I didn't know. I knew about 10 to
yeah,
15 of the guys. They had, referred some other guys to come out. So this energy was like, what's up? What's up, brother? Man, how you doing? How you been? How's work? How's the family? How's
yeah,
business going? What you got going on? And just that energy in itself was like, oh, this is needed.
yeah,
This positive space for an hour is needed where there's no, why you ain't doing this? Why aren't you doing this? It became a safe space. And
yeah,
that safe space, that's even greater than the pictures that we take. And
yeah,
as it's obviously build, grown, and going from 25 to 45 to 85 to 175, and now like we did, this year our largest one that we had 330 guys in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
in New York, back in May, and just that energy of you take that same and the energy has not changed. So when we had
Yeah.
20 guys that knew there were 1 degree of separation that knew each other, now we have strangers that are coming together. The energy is the same. It's all
Yeah.
about, man, okay, you looking good. Like, bro, what's going on? How's everything? How's life treating you? How, like, just in being able to communicate and open up with each other in a safe space. And by the
Yeah.
way, you look good doing it. We're gonna get these pictures. You can network and bring your business cards and let people know what it is you got going on, and
Yep.
have a space to share your nonprofit efforts, have a space to share your mentor program efforts. Just really being able to dive into who we are as a community and share that,
Yeah.
even if only for an hour, the connections that have happened globally, from the
Yeah.
flash mobs, to think that all started with 25 people. This year we set out on a goal to have 3,000 people attend flash mobs, and we hit our
Cool.
goal. 2021, we had 3,000 people come to 10 different cities to come to network, to share positive energy and take that energy back into their communities. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal.
That is phenomenal. I love it. So one of the photos that has probably gained the most notoriety,
Yeah.
and talk about a who knew in the moment when
Yeah. Right.
it sounded like maybe a friend of a friend asked, "Hey, can my son come?" And so
Yes.
just talk a little bit about that event and then what transpired after the photo.
Yeah, no, so that was one of our flash mobs we had in Dallas. It was February 2019,
Okay.
and the picture in reference is Harper, right? We've named it Harper, and Harper is the young boy that's in the picture.
Yeah.
And to your point, he was coming to town for a photo shoot that actually got canceled while he was in the air. So him and his mom were flying in town. They canceled that shoot that he was to be a part of, but they were his mom is close friends with one of my buddy's wife.
Okay.
And so she asked, what you got going on? It's like, well, my husband's going to this photo shoot tomorrow, and gave a little rundown. She's like, oh man, can my son come? And I joked when my boy asked me about it. I said, yeah, as long as he got a suit, because
Yeah.
that's the
Right.
thing. I was like, you can come, but the point of emphasis is the suit, like the
Yeah.
imagery. And I mean, he comes and he greeted. And at this point, he's 6, and he's
Yeah.
just, you can see he's like just looking around at everybody, like, oh, this is cool. Like these are all these guys are, obviously everybody's being, so welcoming to him. They're like, hey, little brother, you out here, you looking good, and all these kind of things. So there was that energy was being laid upon him.
Yeah.
And to be honest, this is the very end of the shoot is where this magic happens. And my boy Santos is framing everybody together, and so we've done the large group, because you'll notice all of our cities we do a large group shot at the very end, and we do it at the very end because we tell people the shoot is from like 10 to 11:30. We know not everybody's gonna be there at 10, so we do the large group shot at like 11:30 and kind of disperse after that.
Yeah.
And so it's the very end, and my guy Santos is like, hey, have a little brother, have him step out in the middle. I need everybody behind him to hold fist of solidarity. And man, he takes a picture, and I go and I look at it, and he's like, "That's yep." He's like, "Yeah, that's." We knew it was gonna be, because you can see it in the capture. You can see it on the camera, like, yeah, that's a dope shot.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was gonna be a multi-generational image,
Right.
right? In the moment, did we know that? No, I knew it'd go viral,
Yeah.
right? I knew it'd go viral. I did not know the reach that it would have to where you'd have people like, Tracy Ellis Ross, Common, Diddy, Chris Brown, the list goes on, Reggie Bush, Stephon Marbury, of people just sharing our image.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. And then, that's 2019, February 2019, a whole year later, that image really, really resurfaced, around the time that we're thinking about George Floyd,
Yeah.
because the image was so powerful that people really started talking about this is our community, right? Like this is our
Yeah.
community, and the image took a second wave of life. Um, and just to be able to have that a year later come to life, as in people are like, man, when was this? And like, yeah, that was a whole year and a half ago at that point in
Yeah.
July 2020. And just being able to have something like that, and we've been able to make moments um, like that since then,
Yeah.
right? To be able to capture more iconic moments, and really dropping a little hint here. We've got a book, a coffee table book that's going to come out full of images
Love it.
here in the next 6 months, and so really kind of focusing on that. But just having that image, and there's so many different voices that it spoke, right? Pictures are worth 1,000 words, and being like, people will look at that, the root of it, they see the community, but everybody has a different perspective on it, and that's what makes it
Yeah.
so beautiful too. Is that no matter what the community that you're from, obviously it speaks really a lot of volumes in our community, but other communities can see that, and they tap into, and they resonate as well, as fatherhood, love, camaraderie, network. Like there are so many different things that you can pick out of that. But yeah, that was for us. That was one of those moments that took us to another stratosphere, honestly, as an organization.
Absolutely. Now, something I want to just have you kind of speak into is when we're so passionate about something that the end result isn't the thing that drives us, right? It's the mission that we're on that's driving us. Talk a little bit about that, because I think so frequently people are afraid to start something, or people are afraid to get something going because they're just worried about the end result. But when you're as passionate about, this topic as you are, the fact that, hey, 20 people showed up, that was great, right? I was super stoked about that. I didn't have well, it's either 1,000 people or it was a
Yeah,
bust.
right,
So
right.
just talk a little bit about that.
I will say, right, the first thing to do is get started.
Yep.
That obviously, right? You can't get to a goal without actually even starting it. Did I think, right? Because did I think that Black menswear would travel the world and be invited into communities all over the world? Like, oh, we can't wait for you to get here and have the red carpet rolled out. No.
Yeah.
Did I think that we would have 300 and over 350,000 followers on social media? Maybe, but no. Did I think that we would have a YouTube channel, a podcast, a clothing line, a influencer network that we're working with Fortune 1,000 companies to do brand deals for guys that are within our network?
Yeah.
No. Um, did I think that I was starting something that would impact my community? Yes.
Yep.
And that's always been the focus of the organization. My focus will never be selling suits. Now, will that be a caveat? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? Would that be a means to an end financially? Absolutely. Because now I'm building something that I want to pass on to my children.
Yeah.
Um, but the focus of that has always been on my passion. And what they say is, when your passion, or when you can turn your passion into profit, is when you'll never work another day in your life.
Yep.
Because at that point, now you're able to know that all of the time that you're spending is an investment into your future.
Yep.
I tell people this all the time. I say, we were doing flash mobs for, this is since 2017. From a business perspective, we didn't really start earning real revenue until we started doing more than taking pictures.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the flash mob was a way for us to get the exposure and build a community.
Yep.
It then became the responsibility of my team and I to say, okay, well, we can leverage this, but the core of who we are is networking community. The core of who we are is fixing a broken mindset that we hold within our community. That's the core of it, and everything else, it comes around that. And as long as we stay true to that, I was reading traction.
Yeah.
And one of the things about traction, and the name of the author slips me right now. Of course it does. But one thing that he said about that, he was like, if you're really starting a business, one thing that you have to make sure that you have the right people in the right seats.
Yep.
Not just your friends because they're your friends.
Yep.
You have to have the right people in the right seats. And if the people that you have in seats cannot explain the same mission verbatim that you have for your organization, you have the wrong people in those seats and you need to make some changes.
Yep.
And when it came to really growing the empire, right? And I call it an empire because there are multiple streams that come with this.
Yeah.
There early on, there were people that were not in the right seats.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. That's a growing pain. That's lessons that are learned, right? And so again, even as you're launching a business and starting and understanding, it's possible that the people that are with you at the beginning might not be with you at the end, not in a bad way,
Yep.
but you have to focus on the business aspect of business.
Yep.
And you know, but the first step in that is getting started. The first step in that is understanding your mission, your vision, and your value as an organization. Because if you don't understand that, then again, you can't continue to mature as an organization if you don't know what your purpose is as a brand, right? And whether that is, you know, a coffee shop, whether that is financial services, hell, shoot, let me not skip over that, right? Understanding your value is not providing products, your value is providing solutions to clients that help them have dignity in retirement.
Yep.
How do I help you get to dignity? Well, one of the ways that I help you get there is I have this product that you can utilize, and the service that I offer, bringing those two together. Now I have now I have value, and I'm not just a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. And focusing on that from a business perspective, when you have value and you're not just a commodity, you're irreplaceable. Yep. Commodities, you know, we're in the financial services industry. Yep. Products change every freaking 30 days.
Yeah.
It's a new product. There are new products that come out, and that new product gonna be better than your old product. Get over it. But if you have value to that client of the relationship, you look out for me and for my family, you keep me abreast of challenges and things that I might understand, like might be getting ready to go through. Yeah. And you really look at me as a person and not a dollar, that's the value. And so understanding that from any business that you're in, if you're trying to land on clients and customers, that's a really, really big thing. And if you focus on that, I can almost guarantee you the clients are going to come, they're going to refer people, they're going to come back and get more stuff from you. It's focusing on the core of why you're starting your business, what your mission is around that, and then everything else kind of falls in line over time.
That's so good. Well, now, NeAndre, I want to be respectful of your time, but any other pivotal moments that you would like to highlight that you feel like, hey, that's really helped me get to where I'm at today?
You know what? It's funny. I think, you know, you hit on them, and the ones that I go back to, right? When I think about, you know, college selection, going to that, when I think about my upbringing, one thing else, I will hit on, right? So for me, meeting my wife, marrying my wife, having 2 sons, I look at all of these as what they did was help me to grow up faster. So I got married at 24. And a lot of people, like a lot of, you know, people my age, like 24, what? Yeah. I've almost been married 10 years now. And I look at it, I'm like, my kids are like, you know, me and my wife are gonna, you know, go on vacations when y'all still have kids that are in their diapers because y'all waited too late, you know? It's like, but like all of those moments, because it helped. As a 24-year-old, I stopped thinking about myself. I started thinking about us. I started thinking about legacy. I started thinking about, you know, those things. And for me, those were moments where I put myself to the side and started thinking about greater opportunities to impact and, you know, really looking at that. Like that was, you know, a moment in my life where my mental shifted. And I really became, you know, I don't think, you know, had I been a single guy, during those moments early on that landed on me and caused that internal trauma, that mental trauma that I had about possibly coming into a bad interaction with a police officer that might end my life. Um, had it just been me as a single guy, I'd probably been like, man, that sucks.
Yeah.
But the fact that I wasn't, and what happens to me if they do this, and how is that going to land on my kids, and what are my boys going to think, and what's my wife going to think, and like all those kind of things, and like that really helped me to kind of open up. So finding you a life partner that I would say that was supportive of everything, and really being supportive of the time that I spent building Black Menswear. That was, again, there were times where it was like there was no money coming in from Black Menswear.
Yep.
Right. It was just time. And it was like, oh, you're gone again. All right. Well, I'll take care of the boys. And having that was wonderful, to have a, true support system on that. So, but again, like, I think you kind of hit on all the moments.
I love it. Well, I want to say thank you so much for just your transparency today and sharing your story. Just how you've gotten to where you're at. I just, once again, reflecting on your story, I think, hey, growing up and not always having someone in the school that looked like me, right? And now your desire to help people see your community in maybe a different light than the way it's been portrayed in the past. Having kids now, and just the story that you can help them see for themselves at a young age, and just all the amazing work you're doing. So I can't wait to do this again in probably a year or so after, you guys continue to expand and grow. But thank you again for your time, my man.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, Phil.